Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 12 of Supergirl called Bizzaro. And I gotta say, this was another really solid installment of the series. This version of Bizzaro is notably different than the one in the comics, but I'm okay with that. Bizzaro in the comics has this tendency to sort of speak in the opposite of what he means. Like if he wants to say to someone, "I hate you," um, he'll say, "Bizzaro love you so much." It's like I hate, and that's in his language. That's the way he says, "I hate you" a lot. And yes, that's completely ridiculous. But Bizzaro is like the product of, I believe it was created in like the 1950s, and comic books have a tendency to sort of repeat ideas from older times, even if they're kind of ridiculous, simply because they're ideas that have been repeated so many times. I mean, nostalgia, even for times before people were born or started reading comics, are a powerful thing. You know, it's tradition. But when you try and take that away from the comic book, try and do stuff like that outside of the comic book community, where people are a little less tolerant of that sort of thing, then changes are inevitable. And I'm okay with this interpretation of Bizarro. It's very, very true to the comics, but it definitely tones down the silliness quite a bit. So let's kind of get right into it. Um, let's just kind of clear up the whole Adam Cat Grant stuff. It's surprising that Cat Grant is so cool with Kara dating her son. I guess she's desperate for anything that makes Adam happy, and given that Kara is her assistant, gives Adam plenty of reason to hang around National City and to hang around Catco. So that really goes a long way towards explaining why Cat is so down with this. And of course, you get a whole lot of the typical, superhero stuff with secret identity and bad guys attacking you in your civilian identity. And yeah, being a superhero really sucks in terms of the way it screws with your dating life. No doubt about it. And that ultimately leads to Kara having to sort of break up with Adam, and the rather frosty way Cat Grant reacts to that. Which is, that's a tough one. Kind of Cat as a bit of a mentor and a friend, that had come to mean a lot to Kara. And for all her flaws, Cat actually has been laying on some seriously good advice for quite a while. And this relationship with Adam, it's not Jimmy, so somebody who's already in a relationship with another person. So that was definitely had that going for it. And in all fairness, Adam does seem to be a pretty good guy. So, I mean, it's a real bummer things worked out this way. Now, I was absolutely over the moon when Cat Grant said he's gone back to Opal City. Now, if you watch my Flash and Arrow reviews, they mentioned Opal City. I believe it was on an episode of Arrow, and I love that to bits. You see, Opal City is the home of Starman, and probably my absolute favorite comic book of the entire 1990s was James Robinson's Starman. It was just a beautiful, beautiful story. It, it really wasn't, I'm not even going to ramble on about it. Let's just say that out of everything that I was reading in the 90s, that was one of my absolute favorites. So I'd been hoping and hoping that we would get a mention of Opal City in Arrow, and I got it. And now to get it again here on Supergirl, it just makes me so happy. That book will always have an enormous place in my heart. And to sort of see that it being mentioned like this tells me that people haven't forgotten Starman, even though it's been over for a long, long time. So I know that I'm not alone in loving that series. So yeah. But anyway, kind of getting back into Bizarro, talking about what they did with her here. As I said, I did like this interpretation of them. The whole flame breath versus freezing breath, freeze vision versus heat vision. Again, that's been done in the comics, and it's kind of ridiculous, but it's cool. And I love how they found a reasonable explanation for why she gets like in the comics, Bizarro's skin is like chalk white and kind of sometimes looks very almost as if he's made out of like a type of crystal, like really hard edges, like the sides of a crystal. Now it varies from time to time, or it's sort of portrayed like having these weird cracks in his face and in his body. I mean, it's pretty freaky, really, depending on the artist. Here, they decided not to go that crazy with it, but they definitely I like the way they paid homage to it with what happens with Bizarro's face after she gets pumped full of the kryptonite, and that's of course a perfectly reasonable, in terms of comic book logic, explanation for why that happens. One thing that I found really funny is if you sort of watch the final fight with Bizarro at the end, apparently the S got flipped around on her costume, which again, Bizarro wears a backwards S. Now, not sure how that happened, and if you also notice really carefully, if you watch that final fight, the color scheme on Bizarro's costume is noticeably darker than Kara's. Now, at first when I was watching, I was like, wait, is that the light? And then, no, it doesn't really matter where the light is. It's definitely shaded differently. Now, why they would do that, I mean, it's such a dead giveaway. Why Max. But it's just one of those things. It's one of those things so that people can subconsciously, I think, notice which one is meant to be the true Kara. And again, Bizzaro, I believe, wearing a slightly darker version of the Superman, Supergirl costume. If I remember keeping, that is also in keeping with the tradition. Um, let's see, what else? Uh, I really like how when Kara and Alex figure out, like, oh crap, Maxwell Lord might be onto us, they, for some unfathomable reason, decide not to tell John about this, even though he's a person who is in the best position to help them. And of course, this all does not work out well at all, and leads to Max making it very clear, like, oh yeah, I totally know your sister's Supergirl. By the way, be really nice, but suck if something bad happened to your mom in the house you guys grew up in. And then, of course, they throw him in jail, in their DEO prison. And I do like that Alex takes the time to specify that the DEO is an extra legal operation, as she says. So I guess they didn't need a warrant when they were stomping around Lord's property a while back. But on the other hand, given what all they're doing, how is there not some public knowledge of these guys? Now again, okay, comic book logic, whatever. But really, if anything is proven, the government is really actually pretty bad at keeping things like this a secret. So, yeah. And I do like that they acknowledge it's like, yeah, this isn't just some guy on the street. This is like one of the most famous people in the world. If they throw him in jail, there are going to be a million people looking for him. And Maxwell Lord has a contingency in place for this. On a completely unrelated note, that cell they threw him in, you notice how it didn't have a toilet? So, yeah. All in all, a good episode, nice interpretation of Bizzaro, good stuff going on with Kara's personal life. Oh, almost forgot to talk about Jimmy and Win. Now, I really like what they're doing with Win here. He's finally back on board as being a member of Team Supergirl, even though he's still got some personal issues about what's going on. But, last episode we see that he was taking a step towards reconciling. Here, he's still kind of upset about the whole situation, but he's moving past it. And this is really the way I've noticed that it tends to work with things like this in television. You'll have one episode where, usually after a breakup, the character is a complete and utter wreck. The next episode, they're still going through the bad times, but by the end of the episode, you will see some sort of a sign that they have begun to move forward. Then by the third episode, the whole situation that caused them their problem, it will be acknowledged, but more or less the character is going along with their routine. And the situation will be referenced as needed for the rest of the season. Learned that watching Veronica Mars. Anyway, so yeah, when he's handling this whole situation about as realistically and reasonably well as you can expect from a person. Now, I imagine there are some people out there who probably got a bug up their butt when he complained about being in the friend zone. And granted, that's a very hot button term these days. Somebody once very aptly put it that, in regards to this, women are not vending machines that you put kindness into until sex falls out, which is quite a quite a good way to put it, and certainly something a person should keep in mind. Not that this sort of thing is limited exclusively to men and their feelings towards women. Um, but I've always kind of now that's one interpretation of what the friend zone means. But I think there's another reasonable and not negative interpretation of that being I'm in a where you say, I'm in a position where the person I like is almost certainly never going to see me as anything but a friend, and I don't think there's anything I can do to change that, and I'm frustrated by this. I don't really see anything negative with that, and that's what I think Wynn is saying. I mean, he doesn't feel like Kara owes him anything. He's just disappointed and frustrated that she's never going to see him the way he wants to see her to see him. And it does sound like as much as that's bothering him, that he is going to try and move on with that. Here it is. He's shown that okay, yeah, I've got this stuff, but Kara's my friend. I care about her. I'm not gonna let this ruin what we do have. And that's really very mature of him. And I love that he and Jimmy kind of share that bonding moment while openly drinking alcohol at work, just steps from Cat Grant's office. Seriously. Yeah. You know, booze in the workplace depends on where you are. After a hard day, I'm sure that there's many an office around the world where people might have a little snip or two to kind of take the edge off after a hard day. But seriously, I mean, can you imagine if Cat Grant walks out of his office and there are those two guys sitting there drinking whiskey while they're on the clock? Oh man, that's going to get you sent to the unemployment line. But I like how Wynn, despite his whole situation, is very clear. It's like, Jimmy, you've obviously got feelings for Kara, and you could be with her. All you have to do is say the word. So if that's what's going on with you, why are you still with Lucy? Jimmy needs to basically is doing both of these women wrong. Particularly Lucy. He's not 100% into that relationship that he's having with her. He still has feelings for somebody else, and he's not dealing with them. So, whatever flaws Wynn might have, he's being totally right that, yeah, Jimmy, you're not doing right by Lucy, and you need to really get this thing with Kara sorted one way or the other. So, I'm oddly reminded of the first season of Arrow, where Tommy was the nicest and most moral person on that show. And again, here, Wynn is actually one of the most mature and reasonable people on the show. So yeah, points to Wynn as a character. I really like what they're doing with that guy. I was a little leery of him at first, because it just seemed like like the nerdy guy who has the crush on the hero girl. I don't know, man. We've seen that a lot of times, and it's been done well, and it's been done very poorly. But we'll just have to see. And you do have to wonder if, a little bit down the road, Wynn has moved on, he finds somebody else. Well, how's Kara going to react to that? Oh, yeah, and then the bit at the end with that thing attacking Kara. Now, I've seen the previews, and I read the comics, so I know exactly what's going on there. And I'm salivating for next week's episode. It's gonna be so good. I can feel it. And again, this is another testament to just how good this show is. Again, it took an episode or two to really get the ball rolling, but that's perfectly normal for most TV shows. Supergirl has once again proven that this is really, really solid entertainment. And the fact that the main character is female is, in a lot of ways, really immaterial. I'm reminded of the thing I read about somebody people had said about the when they were talking to kids about the Legend of Korra, which is a great show. They said that basically boys or girls, they didn't really care that the main protagonist was female. They just loved the fact that she was awesome, and Korra was a great character. I was horribly disappointed when I missed out on the chance to actually talk to Janet Varney, the woman who did the voice of Korra, when I was at a convention, simply because I couldn't find the booth she was at the time she was supposed to speak, because the convention was laid out as ridiculously complicated. Whatever. So, I mean, it's kind of the same situation here with Kara. I mean, it's really immaterial that we're dealing with Supergirl instead of Superman. It's it's just darn good TV, and you can't really ask for much more than that. And again, this is really, really a great interpretation of Supergirl as a character. I think it's probably the best one I've seen since Peter David's run on the comics. Back again in the '90s, because I'm old. So, with that said, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer, all one word. Until next time, take care and have a good one.